I love Kris Smith. I came to work with him for a decade. That's what we talked about. We'll work together for a decade. And then he bamboozled me. And 2 years later, we were going and getting lunch like we did semi-regularly. And in the conversation, I could tell the conversation was different than normal. And he's like, hey, I'm out of here. Here you go. It wasn't exactly like that, but man, I really love the impact that he's made on this ministry. I'm so glad that he's going to be speaking to us. So, Kris, if you want to begin working your way up here. I still think I think Kris is the longest director of AIM. I think he probably will always be the longest director of AIM. But he stayed so long because he had such a great impact. And so I'm glad that you're going to speak to us. We do have something we want to share with you, and then we'll turn it over to you. It says, Adventures and Missions would like to thank you for the special contribution you have made as we celebrate 50 years of this ministry. We cannot think about David's mighty men without thinking about you. While you taught us so well about David's mighty men, we see you as one of the mighty men of God. As we reflect on the impact you have made on this ministry, these powerful words come to mind: servitude, humility, and wisdom. Your creative handiwork is still seen all over this place. Your gentle spirit and your soft-spoken nature complement the smirk we all love. There are so many words we love to use to describe you, but perhaps the word we like most is friend. We honor you today and express our gratitude for your special contribution to this ministry. AIM would not be where it is today without you. Presented on this 10th day of March in the year 2023. Thanks a lot. That's for you.
Well, just before I got up here, Billy McGuigan came up and said, hey, please don't make this about him. And so I had to sit down and rewrite everything. So, sorry. Wow, this is amazing. It's very humbling, pretty special. Wouldn't it be weird? Oh, and I do wonder, I like to imagine things, and I do wonder if up in heaven, are the angels aware what's happening in Lubbock, Texas right now? Are they sitting around like, oh, guys, come over here, look what's happening right there, and they're watching? You know, I would have to think so. Wouldn't it be weird, though, if I were to start off saying, you guys really aren't that special, you know? And you're really not. But you are, but you're not. How many of y'all remember Dobre? Anybody? A few of you? You know, my wife and I we came to the same AIM class in 1981. And I was a preacher's kid, a missionary's kid, and yet I came to AIM probably for the reason that most of you came. Even though I was a missionary's kid, I still felt like I really didn't know my Bible that well and have confidence to share it with someone else, and I wanted to do something about that. And I think that's still true today when you ask people why they come. I met Barb. She was on my team. Things were so different back then. We didn't have team dynamics, and we just went to the place we wanted to go. And we ended up on the same team, and we got to know each other in Lesotho. Ended up coming back, getting married like happens. 10 years later, when Eastern Europe opened up, and there was a great need for missionaries to go into those places, we came back here and went through Sunset Ended up going as missionaries to Slovakia, where we spent 4 years. We had 4 different AIM teams come and work with us, and then during that time, Jay tricked us into coming back when we were done, coming back and working with him, and man, I can't say thanks enough. There is something wrong with this podium. But we stayed for 20 years. And Barb's still here, as you know. I just wonder, when you think back about your experience, I wonder if there are good memories. I wonder if you think back of how you were excited at different points. I wonder if you were ever overwhelmed. I wonder if you ever cried yourself to sleep. I wonder if you ever made funny mistakes, or your teammates made funny mistakes and then you didn't let them forget. I wonder if you ever wondered, am I making any difference? I know I can remember saying, as director during all those years, I can remember numerous times thinking to myself or saying to other people, man, I am not qualified. What am I doing here? But I think what kept me going all those years was I was convinced God brought me here. There were too many things in my life that pointed to God put you there. And even through the tough times, through the rough times, I'd have to look at that and keep going, because I really believed God put me there. I think that's how He works. In all those years, I've kind of learned this. As an AIM student myself, as an AIM coordinator that had AIM students coming with us, as an AIM director working here all those years, I've kind of learned that, God works with the unlikely people. I think if you read your Bible, you see that all through Scripture too, over and over again. You see examples of Gideon. Man, he was so unsure. He doubted, he wondered, and God knew all along, it's you. Moses, Timothy, David, all these others. I think it's interesting, it's funny that you put David's mighty men on here, because I think about that all the time. And I think, when you think about David's mighty men, were they anything special? They had pretty unique abilities. But if you go to 1 Samuel 22, it says this: all of those who were in distress or in debt or discontented, they gathered around David and he became their leader. They didn't have their act together. They had problems, and yet they were willing. And I think that was the key. And God went on to use them to do incredible things because they were willing. Some movies came out a while back, and maybe you've heard of them, called The Lord of the Rings. It amazes me, and I think those are the perfect picture of the life of an AIM student. If you watch those 3 movies, perfect example. I think it was written for AIM. But how many times in those movies do you hear them say things, how they miss home, they miss the Shire? Why are we doing this? It's so hard. We shouldn't even be here. And things like that. They were involved in an incredible, overwhelming battle, and who did they think they were to think that they could overcome the enemy? I think one of the things that is important to remember, because we all have things we can look at wishing we could have done better, but we cannot think that we can go into a terrible battle and come out unscathed. You're going to have scars. You're going to have proof of the battle. But you keep on. I remember hearing Klein Payton one time teach a lesson from Jeremiah 48, where it talks about the warrior that goes into battle but comes home without blood on his sword. You cannot go into a battle, a serious battle, unscathed. I've seen over the years neat stories. I remember an AIM student once went to a different country that was very different from his. And come to find out, he would often disappear from his teammates and they would find him in a park. And he'd just be crying. And I remember talking to him about that a little bit. Cool thing is, this is years later. He and his family are back in that same country as long-term in ministry. I can remember students coming from foreign countries that didn't know much English, and I can remember how difficult it was for them to just sit through class and hear Ed Wharton and things like that in English, and they would go home every day with a terrible headache from all the concentration. But seeing over time the changes in their life was amazing. I know of a student who was accepted into medical school and put that on hold. I remember a girl who flew overseas, and the very day that she arrived on her field, she called me panicked. Kris, I can't do this. I can't do this. My mom needs me. And she gave me this big list of reasons why she needed to go back home. And I said, man, I get it, but you give it a month. And if you feel the same way at the end of a month, then maybe so. And she gave it a month, fell in love with it, stayed the whole time. Scared to death. I think one of the neatest things I've seen is the AME program in Brazil. Very similar to the AIM program here, and it's because of the AIM program here. You know, we sent AIM students to Brazil for years before that ever happened, but people in Brazil and places down there saw those students, and they wanted the same thing. But they found it so hard to raise enough money to come here to study, and so it was like, that's not an option for them. But somebody, had the idea of, why can't we do that here? And because of the example of those first AIMers who probably thought many times along the way, are we doing any good? They had a part of that. And so what they did is going to continue all across South America for years and years to come. It's been a real highlight getting to come to work and work with Barb every day. You guys know her. I don't know if she'd say the same thing, but it's too bad. But also getting to work with Jay and Jason and Barry Day, Ben Walker, Chris Johnson, Pat and Corey and Robbie. Got to tell you, we laughed a lot. We laughed a lot in those years. We learned a lot. Did some crying, mostly Pat. Did that. But here's what I just want to end with this is, man, I'm so thankful that God uses the unlikely ones. you and me. I think the key to it is those who are willing. You're just the ones that raised your hand. You said, can I do that? Can I help? I don't know what I'm doing. You certainly had no idea what you were getting yourself into. You just had your hand up. Raise your hand. God works with the unwilling or the unlikely. He always has, and I think he's going to continue to do that. And maybe that's you still. You know, one of the things at the end of The Lord of the Rings is Bilbo Baggins says something like this. I think as old as he was in that movie, coming towards the end of his life maybe, he says, I think I'm quite ready for another adventure. I don't know what it was like for you at 18 to say, I'm willing to leave home. I'm willing to go into a place I don't know anything about, into the unknown, and let God use me however he sees best. But you know, if you're like me, the older we get, it's a little harder to say that, isn't it? We kind of get more comfortable, and we kind of aren't as adventurous maybe as we used to be. I wonder if, can we still have that attitude? What if God were to come to us today and say, hey, I need you, I want you? Would we still so quickly raise our hands saying, use me? So, thank you for the years. Thank you for the memories. The rest of your life, be willing. You know, if I think Nat said this morning that he was almost 90. If we make it that long, we'll get to be here for the 70th anniversary for that. Wouldn't that be something? Just don't have stairs like that, okay, right? Man, we love you guys. It was some of the best memories of my life.